Thank you very much. I won't introduce myself or say good morning again because if you don't know me by now, then it's pretty tough. Anyway, the title of my talk this morning is The Future of ICRP, and that's because we are definitely heading towards our centenary and beyond. Just once again, it is of course a great pleasure that we are able to hold this symposium here in Korea, and particularly here in Seoul. We have already heard that this is a city of great culture, but it is also a very modern, contemporary city as well. And in fact, when I was researching, visiting Seoul, I was perhaps a little surprised to see that one of the advertisements on the internet said, "Keep calm and visit Seoul." Keep calm was, of course, a slogan that the British government introduced in the Second World War to boost morale. Keep calm and carry on. This now seems to have been used quite widely around the world, but I am somewhat pleased to see that the ancient British crown still features as part of the advertisement. However, in addition, I would once again like to thank all of our sponsors for this event, but in particular, I have to thank our top level or platinum supporters. These are the Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety, the Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company, and the Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute. They have made a very significant financial contribution to this symposium. So again, many thanks. So without further ado, I will tell you obviously just a little about ICRP, but then how I see us moving forward into the future. We're moving towards our centenary because ICRP is now 87 years old. It means we were founded in 1928 with the original title of the International X-ray and Radium Protection Committee. This name was changed in 1950 to our current International Commission on Radiological Protection. And ICRP has been a registered charity in the UK for many years. This is in fact where it all began, in Stockholm, as I say, in 1928, in the restaurant Hasselbacken. And I don't think our first chairman needs any introduction. The CVERT is now, of course, enshrined in radiological protection history. I think it is actually slightly interesting just to look back at the first publication of ICRP, because already the effects of radiation were, of course, becoming known. Injuries to superficial tissues. I'm not quite sure what derangements of internal organs and changes in blood were being alluded to at the time, but they were there. They also recognized the need to be careful of the working hours of radiation workers, not more than 7 hours a day and not more than 5 working days a week. European countries have been struggling with a working time directive for many years since. And also where you actually positioned your X-ray machine. So of course, this was the very beginning, and we have come a very long way since then. ICRP's mission has really not changed that much over the years. We try to advance for the public benefit the science of radiological protection, and in particular by providing our recommendations and guidance on all aspects of protection against ionizing radiation, and that is still very much true today. I am not going to go into detail of the current structure of ICRP this term, but all of the people that are listed as the committee chairs you are going to hear from today. And just in case you can't put a face to the name, these are the people on the main commission, amongst all the other committee members who you will see over the next 3 days. So what other considerations about ICRP? I've already said we are a charitable organisation. What that means is that we recruit experts from all areas of radiological protection from all around the world. Another reminder is that all of our members are unpaid. You all voluntarily give time and effort to make ICRP the success it is. And I don't want anyone to forget that very many members have very busy full-time jobs. So what about the future of ICRP? What I'm going to do, it's some in more detail than others, is describe how we are going to go through various processes. We are going to be reviewing the constitution of ICRP, refining our election process, working on the priorities for our next strategic plan. And as was again highlighted in our meeting with other organisations yesterday afternoon, we see there is a need to produce a plain language overview of our system and summaries of our recommendations. It is, however, with further pleasure that I am able to announce here that ICRP is able to offer open access now to its first 50 years of publications. So all those from 1928 to 1978, and that's up to and including publication 28, will be freely available to you all. And that for us is quite a significant step forward, because we have not been able to have open access to our publications before this time. Of course, there is more to do. We would like to ensure that our other publications are available in coming years. So reviewing the constitution of ICRP, and again, I'm not going to go into any legal detail, but the UK charity position is somewhat changing the way that some of its charities are able to operate with changes to the constitution. And over the course of the next year, ICRP is going to change in line with this. There will be no outward change to the way you see ICRP. That is more an internal change of our affairs. We had our first open elections and nomination process for this current term in 2013. And we feel that was a successful way to recruit new membership. We had nearly 200 nominations for membership at that time. And so we will certainly be going forward with another open nomination process to elect members for the next term in 2017. ICRP produced its first strategic plan in 2011, and that was designed to extend up until the end of this current term in 2017. We included our strengths, challenges we felt were facing not only us, but other members of the radiological protection community, our objectives and our initiatives. And I'm not going to go into details of all of that, but just to highlight some of the achievements that we have actually succeeded with in the last 4 years. Our strategic achievements, first of all, have included the establishment of the biennial symposia, such as these. We have established the special liaison organisation meetings with many other organisations associated with radiological protection. I've already mentioned we'd had open nominations for members, and in fact, half of the membership was new in the last term. 20% of those were women, which is a figure I sincerely hope we can increase at the next election in 2017. ICRP has also developed a code of ethics, and something else just from the operational side of things is we changed our publisher from Elsevier to Sage in 2013. Other things that we have been able to do is to recommend areas of research that we feel important to take forward radiological protection, not only to UNSCARE but to other organisations. And one of our aims was also to endeavour to integrate the protection of the environment into the system of radiological protection, and I feel we've gone a long way towards that in publication 124. So what about our next strategic plan? I say that the current one in theory runs until 2017. So now is certainly the time to think about developing our next strategic plan. I may actually have written 2015 to 2021 on the side of the slide here, but I think one of the things we certainly need to consider is our timeliness. We should have a strategic plan for each term of the ICRP, perhaps with updates on an interim basis. And of course, we need to consider what the content of this strategic plan will be. Some of the issues, of course, we are considering just build on the first strategic plan that we developed. Of course, we want to be able to continue improving our recommendations and also to have the infrastructure in place to support our work. Increasingly, we know there is a need to broaden awareness of ICRP and its work, and as mentioned with the open access to the first 50 years, further access to our publications. And we must, of course, continue to increase our engagements with the whole of the radiological protection community. Our Symposia, as you know, was a new initiative in 2011. Again, it's all part of trying to improve our relations, increase our collaboration, and broaden our awareness. We have been trying to aim for what I'm calling diverse global venue. As I mentioned earlier, we've had North America, the Middle East, we're now here in Asia, and we can already announce that, or you have heard, that the 4th International Symposium will be held in Paris in 2017. And I'm pleased to say that the first meeting of the Paris Organising Committee I know has already taken place. So taking the lead from our Korean colleagues here, our French colleagues are taking up the mantle to organise our next symposium. ICRP has, of course, had to work closely with many other international organisations over the years, and I have named just a few of them here. But again, ICRP realised that we did need to be speaking to more organisations over a broader field. This was going to be increasingly difficult just by having observer representatives to our committees and committee meetings. So we decided to establish what we have called special liaison status. And what that means is we can actually then meet and exchange ideas with a much broader group of organisations. Representatives from these organisations may be invited to committee meetings to discuss particular issues, and they will also be included in task groups where it's deemed appropriate to bring expertise. Of course, you are included in the symposia, and again, I'm delighted that so many of the organisations are represented in here today. In addition, we felt it important that we are able to have additional separate meetings with these organisations. We had the third such meeting yesterday afternoon, having had a full-day meeting last year in London. And we have fortunately already had the offer to be able to have a full-day meeting in 2016 in Vienna, and I'm very grateful to IAEA who have actually made us that offer. We, of course, have a lot of logistics to organise, but I see this again as another improvement and way forward for ICRP to interact with others. The number of organisations has steadily increased since they were introduced, and in fact, although I've put on here it's increased to 18, even since I've made this slide, we now have 19 organisations who are working more closely with us. Many of them are European, many, of course, are international, but I'm also pleased to say that within the last year we have 2 American organisations who have joined us in this status. Well, of course, we want to encourage more global representation from other organisations as well. And I think one thing that, as a medic, of course, I have a vested interest in medicine. We need to be able to liaise with more radiology organisations in addition to actually bring on board radiological protection to the health professionals. Again, looking more towards the future, ICRP is a charity. It is not a large organisation with a large financial reserve. Many of our planned strategies to improve not only our operation, but again our interaction with you, would require significant capital spend and increased resource. Since the global financial crisis in 2008, contributions to ICRP were in decline. And so we felt there was a need to endeavour to raise funds by other means. We have engaged a fundraising company called CCS, with whom we've been working over the last couple of years, and we have indeed benefited from this cooperation. We are now embarking on a full campaign, again to increase the funds of ICRP. Our campaign priorities really reflect very closely our plans for our strategic plan going into the future. Yes, we want to be able to maintain and improve the system of radiological protection. It's at the heart and the core of what ICR does and what we are about. Again, we want to broaden awareness, make our publications and recommendations more easily accessible, and continue working with the organisations, policymakers. But actually, increasingly, I think we have to be able to reach out to the interested public. We are aiming to raise 10 million euros over the next 5 years through our campaign, which we have called Advancing Together. And again, many of those organisations that are here in Korea have made a substantial contribution to this symposium, which of course goes towards our fundraising efforts in addition. Looking more now to our system of radiological protection. We have had 13 sets of fundamental recommendations since 1928. And as we keep saying, we like to think we have one system of radiological protection. Our aim, a little bit like our mission, has really not changed over a significant time. Of course, we want to be able to provide an appropriate level protection for all people and increasingly the environment against any detrimental effect of radiation exposure. But what, of course, we do not want to limit any desirable human action that may be associated, or even benefit that may be associated with that. Our last set of general recommendations, as you all know, was publication 103 that was printed in 2007, already 8 years ago. Like a lot of ICRP's recommendations, these are of course based on science, ethical, social values and experience that we actually learn with time. And these do go on to form the basis of safety standards, legislation and other guidance and programs worldwide. I would just like to point out that ICRP 103 had a very long gestation that began back in 1998. There were technical discussions at ICRP meetings both in 2000 and 2004, and there were web consultations on initial drafts in 2004 and 2006. There were also progress reports before the final publication in 2007. So that obviously, of course, took 9 years in the making. I feel that certainly writing many ICRP recommendations, but perhaps even more so our general recommendations, is a little bit like going on a long and winding road or endeavouring to walk parts of the Great Wall of China. It is, of course, a complex and lengthy process. It is now 17 years since the last major system review was even began. The main commission are fully aware that we do, of course, need to continually review the system of protection, and we are planning to spend significant time at our next meeting in 2016 beginning to review this such system. Don't worry, it doesn't mean to say that we're immediately thinking of making many changes, but of course we need to assess what has been happening over those last 17 years to see where updates, etc., are appropriate. What are my personal views really as to how else we should take ICRP forward? And some of these certainly are personal. They may not reflect the other ideas from the main commission. I see a need that we should be strengthening our ICRP Secretariat. We have Chris Clement, we have Lynn Lemaire, and we have Nobi Hamada, who is our Associate Secretary. So we actually have only 2 paid employees at ICRP. As we expand and as we want to reach further out into the global community, I see a need that we need to improve and strengthen this Secretariat. The main commission have touched briefly on considering other types of membership, and again I think this is something that we need to look at in future. If sufficient financial funding allowed, I'd like us to be able to consider awarding funding to young professionals who are training, again to bring them into the radiological community. And of course, in the increasingly technological world in which we live, I see a need for us to use social media more. Perhaps an ICRP app would be appropriate. So in conclusion, ICRP is evolving and it's updating our operations. We have increasing collaboration, I think to the mutual benefit of both, with other organisations. And yes, we need to aim to establish our longer-term financial security. I do not want us to forget that ICRP will, of course, also continue to provide what I consider relevant guidance and recommendations, and we will certainly not compromise our independence as we head towards our centenary and beyond. Just finally, I looked for a Korean proverb that may well reflect some of these thoughts. In fact, I couldn't find one, but I did find a Chinese one. Do not fear going forward slowly. Perhaps at times ICRP has moved forward quite slowly, but I think of recent time we have perhaps made more rapid change. Fear only to stand still. And again, relevant, I think, to the next 3 days, an American journalist called Robert Quillen said, "Discussion is an exchange of knowledge, an argument an exchange of ignorance." I like to think we will have much discussion over the next 3 days and hopefully very little argument. Thank you very much.